Michael's small autistic daughter screamed in the restaurant, but the nanny changed everything. Subscribe to the channel and comment on where you're watching from. The clattering of dishes against the marble tables carried that cold elegance typical of the Grand Bistro. The restaurant, located in the heart of the Lourdes neighborhood in Los Angeles, was a temple of high-end California cuisine, where business people closed million-dollar deals over a croissant and artisanal coffee. The exposed brick walls contrasted with imported crystal chandeliers, creating an atmosphere that whispered prosperity in every detail. On that sunny afternoon in March, Michael adjusted his Italian tie nervously while watching his daughter Lily play with the silver forks. At 45, he was one of the most respected developers in California, responsible for building the top boutique hotels in the capital. His square face and well-groomed beard conveyed the confidence of someone used to leading board meetings. But at that moment, his brown eyes revealed a restlessness he tried to hide. "Lily, sweetheart, stop swinging your leg like that," he murmured, casting furtive glances at the neighboring tables, where other diners were already beginning to frown. The 7-year-old girl, with her blonde hair tied in 2 braids and wearing a pink linen dress, seemed to be in her own world. Her bright blue eyes were fixated on the repetitive movement of the forks, which she tapped against the plate in a rhythm only she could understand. The metallic sound echoed through the dining room, cutting through the discreet conversations and the civilized clinking of wine glasses. "Michael, you need to do something," whispered Sarah, his wife, through clenched teeth. At 38, she was one of the most followed digital influencers in Los Angeles, known for her posts about luxury lifestyle and perfect motherhood. Her brown hair flowed straight over her shoulders, framing a face that had cost 3 plastic surgeries to achieve the desired symmetry. People are staring. The couple had chosen that restaurant to celebrate the signing of an important contract, a $15 million resort in the San Gabriel Mountains. It should have been a moment of celebration, but Lily's growing anxiety turned everything into a public nightmare. Suddenly, the noise of the forks stopped. Lily dropped the utensils and began to rock her body back and forth, a repetitive movement that Michael recognized as a sign that something was very wrong. The girl's lips quivered, and a low moan began to escape her throat. "No, no, no," murmured Sarah, clutching her Chanel bag as if it were a shield. "Not here, for God's sake." But it was too late. Lily let out a piercing scream that cut through the atmosphere like a siren. In a sudden movement, she threw herself onto the stone floor, starting to thrash and scream with an intensity that made all the waiters stop in the middle of their tasks. "Too loud! Too loud!" the girl shouted, covering her small ears with her hands. The silence that followed was deafening. 30 pairs of eyes turned to the Michael family. Michael felt the blood rush to his face as he tried to bend down to pick up his daughter, but Lily writhed on the floor as if in physical agony. "My God, what a lack of manners," commented a grey-haired lady at the next table, not bothering to lower her voice. "Who brings a child like this to a place like this?" "It must be stress," whispered another patron. "These rich kids today have no limits." Sarah was paralyzed, torn between shame and a growing anger she didn't know where to direct. Her hands trembled as she frantically fiddled with her phone, probably mentally calculating how many likes she would lose if someone filmed that scene. It was then that a figure stood out from the frantic movement of the waiters. A woman whom no one had noticed until then, medium height, wearing the navy blue uniform of the restaurant's caretakers. She approached the table leisurely, as if she knew exactly what to do. "Can I help?" she asked with a southern accent, addressing Michael first and then calmly crouching down beside Lily. "Look, I don't know if you'll be able to—" Michael began, but was interrupted by the woman who raised her hand, asking for silence. The caretaker, who wore a badge with the name Carmen Santos, did not try to touch Lily immediately. Instead, she positioned herself in the girl's line of sight and began to make gentle movements with her hands, as if conducting an invisible orchestra. "Lily," she said, in a melodic and deep voice. "Lily, look here at me, sweetie." To everyone's astonishment, the girl reduced her screams, still sobbing, but clearly paying attention to the woman crouched beside her. Carmen began to hum a melody that no one recognized, a mix of folk song with something that sounded like a prayer. Her hoarse yet tuned voice created a bubble of tranquility amidst the chaos. "Go away, little fish. Leave the pond," she sang, making gestures that mimicked fish swimming in the air. "Put one hand on your head, the other in the canoe." Lily stopped thrashing, her blue eyes fixed on Carmen's hands, following the hypnotic movement of the brown, calloused fingers. Slowly, the girl began to sit up, still sniffling but visibly calmer. "That's right, Princess," Carmen whispered, now extending her open hand towards Lily without forcing contact. "Shall we breathe together? Inhale, exhale." The entire restaurant watched in absolute silence. Even the waiters had stopped pretending to work. Michael felt his legs go weak, torn between relief and a growing admiration for the woman who, in just a few minutes, had achieved what he hadn't been able to for months. Carmen continued humming as Lily gradually accepted her presence. The girl did not touch the outstretched hand, but completely stopped, screaming. Her breathing began to normalize, and she started to sway her body more gently, almost as if she were dancing while seated. "How do you—" Sarah began, but her voice faltered. "Every child has their own way," Michael replied simply, keeping his focus on Lily. "We just need to understand what music they are listening to inside." 3 days after the incident at the Grand Bistro, Carmen Smith was standing in the doorway of the apartment she shared with her 2 daughters in the Maplewood neighborhood of northwest Los Angeles. The phone rang insistently in her calloused hand, displaying an unknown number that she hesitated to answer. At 42 years old, Carmen had learned that calls from strange numbers rarely brought good news. "Hello," she finally answered, while watching the movement of the cobblestone street outside her window, where children were flying kites among the parked cars. "Ms. Carmen, this is Michael Johnson from the restaurant. Do you remember me?" The businessman's voice sounded different over the phone, less confident, almost hesitant. Carmen immediately remembered the man in the grey suit and the blonde girl she had calmed 3 days earlier. "Yes, I remember, Mr. Michael. How is little Lily?" "Well, that's exactly why I'm calling." Michael paused, and Carmen could hear muffled voices in the background. "Would you be available to come to my house? I wanted to discuss a job." Carmen frowned. In her 15 years of caring for children, she had learned to be wary of vague proposals. "What kind of job, Mr. Michael?" "To take care of Lily, as a nanny, full-time." The silence that followed was filled with the noise of cars passing on the avenue and the joyful shouts of children playing. Carmen felt her heart race. Full-time jobs were rare and well-paid, but they always came with complications. "May I ask why? Don't you already have someone taking care of her?" "We've had 5 nannies in the last 6 months," Michael admitted, and Carmen could feel the exhaustion in his voice. "None have been able to handle Lily's particularities." Carmen was well aware of those particularities. During her years working in daycare centers and as a private caregiver, she had encountered several children like Lily, boys and girls who saw the world differently, who needed more patience and understanding than most adults were willing to offer. "Mr. Michael, may I ask a question? Has Lily been evaluated by any specialists?" Another silence, longer this time. "We are exploring some possibilities. But at this moment, our priority is to find someone who can take good care of her. Carmen closed her eyes. She knew what that meant. Parents who were still denying or trying to hide their children's neurodivergence as if it was something to be ashamed of. She had seen this dozens of times. "All right, I can come tomorrow morning to discuss things further." "Perfect. I'll send a driver to pick you up at 9 o'clock. Can you give me the address?" As she dictated the address, Carmen felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Jobs in wealthy households could be complicated, but the salary would be enough to finally pay off the mortgage and perhaps even return to studying at night. The next morning, a black Civic stopped in front of the rusty gate of her home. Carmen had chosen her best outfit, black dress pants and a long-sleeve white blouse that hid the burn scars she had earned years earlier working in a bakery. Her curly hair was tied back in a low bun, and she carried a simple folder with her work references. The driver, a quiet middle-aged man, drove her through the busy streets of Los Angeles until they reached Beverly Hills, where huge houses were hidden behind tall walls and lush gardens. The Johnson residence was a 3-story modernist construction with large glass windows and a facade that mixed exposed concrete with natural stones. Carmen was greeted by a uniformed maid who led her through an impressive entrance hall decorated with artwork she didn't recognize, but which clearly cost more than she earned in a year. The scent of expensive cleaning products mingled with a floral perfume coming from a gigantic arrangement of white roses. "You can wait here in the living room," the maid said, pointing to a spacious area with white leather sofas and a giant flat-screen TV. Michael appeared a few minutes later, wearing jeans and a navy polo shirt. Without the formal restaurant suit, he looked younger and, surprisingly, more vulnerable. "Ms. Carmen, thank you so much for coming. Please have a seat." Before she could respond, a sharp voice echoed from the top of the spiral staircase that dominated the living room. "Michael, you can't be serious." Sarah Johnson descended the stairs as if she were on a runway, wearing a designer tracksuit that probably cost more than Carmen's monthly rent. Her hair was tied back in a high ponytail, and even without makeup, she maintained that artificial beauty Carmen recognized from magazines. "Sarah, we've already talked about this," Michael said, but his voice lacked firmness. "Yes, we did, and I made it clear that I don't agree." Sarah planted herself next to her husband, casting a scrutinizing glance at Carmen that she didn't try to hide. "No formal training, no references from known families. How can I trust my daughter to someone like that?" Carmen felt her blood boil, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of dealing with difficult employers had taught her that reacting in the moment only made things worse. "Ms. Sarah," she said, keeping her voice calm. "I may not have a college degree, but I have 15 years of experience caring for children. And from what I saw at the restaurant, Lily needs someone who understands how she works, not someone with a piece of paper on the wall." Sarah's face tightened. "Experience doesn't replace. Lily is not just any child. She has special needs that require professional preparation." "What kind of needs?" Carmen asked directly. The couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was Michael who broke the silence. "Lily has some challenging behaviors, crises like the one at the restaurant, difficulty sleeping, issues with changes in routine. The other babysitters couldn't handle it." Carmen nodded. "And have you sought specialized help? Psychologist, pediatric neurologist?" "We're evaluating," Sarah replied curtly, "but that's none of your business." "If I'm going to take care of the girl, it is my business," Carmen retorted, surprising everyone, including herself, with the firmness in her voice. "I can't do a good job if I don't understand what she needs." At that moment, the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs interrupted the tension. Lily appeared, wearing a unicorn pajamas and carrying a faded pink blanket. Her blonde hair was tousled, and she avoided eye contact with everyone, staring at some point on the wall. "Lily, go back to bed, sweetheart," Sarah said automatically. But the girl ignored her mother and walked directly to Carmen, stopping a few feet away. She stood there swaying slightly, saying nothing. Carmen crouched down to be at the child's level. "Hi, Lily. Do you remember me?" The girl didn't respond, but she stopped swaying. Carmen began to hum softly the same melody from the restaurant, and Lily's eyes immediately turned to her. Go away, fish," Carmen murmured, and she saw a small smile form on the girl's lips. Sarah and Michael watched in silence, impressed by their daughter's immediate reaction. "All right," Michael finally said. "Let's do a 1-week trial." Carmen's first day in the Smith household began at 6 in the morning when she got off the bus in Savassi and walked the 8 blocks to Beverly Hills. The morning air in Los Angeles was fresh, and the traffic noise was still bearable. She had woken up at 4:30 to prepare breakfast for her daughters and get everything organized before leaving, knowing she wouldn't return home until after 8 at night. The housekeeper, who introduced herself as Mrs. Rosa, greeted her at the service entrance with a discreet but genuine smile. The boss left instructions. Rosa, a black woman in her 50s, said as she led Carmen through the impeccably organized kitchen. "Lily wakes up at 7, breakfast at 7:30, and you have to follow exactly the routine written in this notebook." Rosa handed Carmen a hardcover notebook with floral prints, opened to a page filled with notes in Sarah's cursive handwriting. Bath schedule, food she can and can't have, permitted activities, it's all here. Carmen quickly flipped through the pages and frowned. There were detailed lists about everything. Lily only eats crustless bread. Do not let her watch cartoons with loud music. Note any strange behavior to report to the mother. "And what's this?" Carmen asked, pointing to a page titled Daily Report. "Oh, that's something the boss insists on," Rosa explained with a sigh. "Every day you have to write everything that happened, what the girl ate, if she threw a tantrum, those things. She reads it all at night." Carmen tucked the notebook into her bag. 15 years of experience had taught her to recognize controlling parents, but she had never seen anything so detailed. It was as if Sarah was looking for reasons to fire the new babysitter before even giving her a real chance. At exactly 7, Carmen went up to Lily's room. The door was ajar, and she could hear the girl talking to herself in a soft voice. She knocked lightly before entering. The room was a pink dream, walls painted in pastel shades, white lacquered furniture, dozens of stuffed animals organized on shelves. But Lily was on the floor in a corner, organizing and reorganizing a set of colorful blocks into perfect rows. "Good morning, Princess," Carmen said gently, without getting too close. Lily glanced at her quickly and returned her focus to the blocks. "Blue, green, yellow, red," she murmured. "Blue, green, yellow, red." Carmen watched for a few moments before speaking. "What pretty colors. Can I sit here close by?" The girl didn't respond, but she also didn't move away when Carmen sat on the floor, keeping a respectful distance. For 10 minutes, they stayed like that, Lily organizing blocks into repetitive patterns, Carmen observing and occasionally commenting on the colors. "Lily, how about we go downstairs for breakfast?" Carmen finally suggested. "No," Lily replied without lifting her eyes from the blocks. Carmen remembered the instructions from Sarah's notebook. In case of refusal, insist firmly but without confrontation. Instead, she tried a different approach. "All right, I'll sing a little song while you organize the blocks. When the music ends, we'll go downstairs together. How does that sound?" Lily stopped moving the blocks and looked at Carmen for the first time since she had entered the room. Go away, fish. Leave the pond," Carmen began, clapping softly to the rhythm. Put one hand on your head, the other on the canoe." To her surprise, Lily began to sway her body to the rhythm of the music. When Carmen finished the first verse, the girl spontaneously stood up and walked toward the door. In the kitchen, another challenge awaited. Lily categorically refused to eat the crustless whole grain bread that had been prepared for her, pushing the plate away and starting to make protest noises. "She only eats this specific bread," Mrs. Rosa explained, visibly worried. "If she doesn't eat, the boss will get angry." Carmen observed Lily, who had started to sway her legs under the table in an agitated manner. "Lily, aren't you hungry?" "Bread, no," the girl murmured. "And what would you like to eat?" Lily pointed to a fruit bowl on the kitchen counter. Carmen looked and saw bananas, apples, and some mangoes. "Mango," Lily said clearly. "Can't have," Mrs. Rosa interjected. "The boss made it very clear that the coffee has to be croissant with milk." Carmen weighed her options. She could force Lily to eat the croissant and probably trigger a meltdown, or she could improvise and face the consequences with Sarah later. "Mrs. Smith, could you peel a mango for Lily? I'll take responsibility." Mrs. Smith hesitated, but complied. Lily devoured the mango eagerly, getting her hands messy and smiling for the first time since Carmen had arrived. The rest of the morning passed with minor adjustments to the established routine. Instead of watching the educational shows prescribed by Sarah, Lily showed interest in listening to Carmen hum while folding clothes. The girl even repeated some parts of the songs, revealing an impressive musical memory. Around 11 o'clock, Lily was in the garden of the house, watching ants carry crumbs when Sarah suddenly appeared, coming from the gym in workout clothes and her hair tied up in a high bun. "How is she?" she asked, but her eyes were already scanning the garden for trouble. "Very well," Carmen replied. "She ate a mango at breakfast, helped fold clothes, and now she's watching the ants." "A mango?" Sarah's tone changed immediately. "I left clear instructions about breakfast." "She didn't want to eat the croissant, Mrs. Sarah. I thought it was better to offer something she wanted." Sarah took her phone out of her pocket and began typing furiously. Carmen suspected she was making notes about the disobedience of the new nanny. "Carmen, I need you to understand something," Sarah said, putting her phone away. "Lily is not an ordinary child. She has specific needs, routines that cannot be broken. If we start giving in on small things, it will turn into complete chaos." Carmen took a deep breath before responding. "With all due respect, Mrs. Sarah, but Lily seems like a very bright and sensitive girl. Perhaps the overly rigid routines are what are stressing her out." Sarah's face tightened. "You've been here for 4 hours, and you already think you know my daughter better than I do." Before Carmen could respond, Lily let out a sharp scream and began covering her ears. The two women looked around for the source of the discomfort until they realized the gardener had turned on a lawnmower in the neighboring yard. Carmen calmly approached Lily and began to hum softly, covering the noise of the mower with her voice. Gradually, the girl stopped fidgeting and leaned slightly against Carmen, seeking comfort. Sarah watched the scene with an expression that mixed admiration and irritation. When Lily calmed down, she turned to Carmen. "I'll be keeping an eye on you," she said curtly, before going back inside. Carmen stayed in the garden with Lily, who had returned to watching the ants as if nothing had happened. She knew the coming days would be crucial. Sarah was clearly looking for reasons to fire her, but Lily needed someone who truly understood her. That night, while filling out the daily report in the floral notebook, Carmen wrote in neat handwriting, "Lily showed interest in music and had a good appetite for fruits. She responded well to gentle approaches during stressful moments. I recommend investigating auditory sensitivity." She closed the notebook knowing she had planted a seed. Now it remained to be seen if it would germinate or be trampled by Sarah's distrust. Carmen's second week in the Santana house began with an unexpected discovery. It was a rainy Tuesday in April, and Lily had spent the morning restless, refusing to leave her room even for breakfast. Carmen had tried all the usual strategies: songs, gentle conversations, even showing her colorful blocks. But nothing worked. Around 10 o'clock, while Carmen was organizing Lily's clothes in the closet, a strange sound caught her attention. It was coming from the girls' room, but it wasn't the usual noise of toys or objects being dragged across the floor. It was music. Carmen approached the slightly open door and peeked inside. Lily was sitting on the floor, facing away from the entrance, and in her small hands was a tablet that she was manipulating with surprising precision. A complex melody was coming from the device, a mix of classical notes that Carmen didn't recognize, but sounded absolutely harmonious. "Lily?" Carmen called softly, entering the room. The girl turned around, still holding the tablet. On the screen, a virtual piano app displayed the keys she had pressed. "Music," said Lily, one of the few words she pronounced clearly. Carmen sat down next to her on the plush rug. "Did you make this music?" Lily nodded and resumed playing. Her small fingers moved across the virtual keys with a skill that left Carmen impressed. The melody emerging was elaborate, with variations and repetitions that showcased an impressive, intuitive musical understanding. "Where did you learn this, princess?" In response, Lily navigated the tablet and opened YouTube. She showed Carmen a playlist of classical music, Bach, Mozart, Chopin, that she had apparently discovered on her own. Carmen watched for 15 minutes as Lily played entire sections of the compositions, adapting them to the virtual piano with a precision that bordered on the impossible for a 7-year-old. It wasn't a mechanical reproduction. Lily added her own variations, creating musical bridges between one piece and another. "My God," Carmen murmured, "you have an incredible gift." At that moment, Sarah's voice echoed from downstairs. "Carmen, can you come here, please?" Carmen went down the stairs to find Sarah in the living room, wearing a beige, tailored suit and holding the report notebook. Her expression was not the friendliest. "Reading your reports, I see that you continue to change Lily's routine," Sarah said bluntly. "Yesterday you wrote that she played in the garden for 2 hours. The schedule called for indoor educational activities. Mrs. Sarah, can I talk to you about something important?" Carmen interrupted. "About a talent I discovered in Lily." "Talent?" Sarah frowned. "Carmen, Lily has limitations. We shouldn't—" Carmen took a deep breath. "Did you know your daughter can play music by ear? Complex compositions that she hears once and reproduces perfectly?" "What are you talking about? Please, come with me." Reluctantly, Sarah followed Carmen to Lily's room. The girl was still on the floor with her tablet, now playing a simplified version of Für Elise by Beethoven. Sarah stopped at the door, mouth agape. When did she start doing this?" "I don't know how long, but she has an exceptional musical ear," Carmen explained. "Maybe if we invested in a real instrument—" "Instruments make noise," Sarah cut in automatically. "The neighbors will complain." Carmen felt a pang of frustration. "Mrs. Sarah, with all due respect, Lily has a rare talent. This could be a way for her to express herself, to connect with the world." Sarah watched her daughter for a few minutes in silence. Carmen could see the conflict on her face. The mother wanting the best for her child, struggling against the woman worried about others' opinions. "I'll talk to my husband," she finally said. That night, Carmen heard a heated discussion coming from the couple's bedroom. The voices were not clear through the thick walls, but the tone was unmistakably tense. The next morning, Michael appeared at the breakfast table with dark circles under his eyes and a tired expression. "Carmen, Sarah told me about Lily's musical talent," he said, absently stirring his coffee. "Do you really think it's worth investing in a piano?" "Mr. Michael, I'm not an expert, but 15 years of caring for children have taught me to recognize when one has something special. Lily is not just a girl with difficulties. She has a brain that works in a unique way." Michael was silent for a long moment. "You know, Carmen, when I was a child, I also had difficulties. I didn't like changes. I got anxious in social situations. My parents thought it was just shyness." Carmen encouraged him to continue with just her gaze. "I only managed to adapt when I discovered I had a knack for numbers, for spatial planning. That led me to architecture, then to real estate. Maybe Lily needs to discover her own path too." "Exactly," said Carmen, "and music could be that path." 3 days later, a delivery truck stopped in front of the Smiths' house. 2 men unloaded a compact grand digital piano, complete with all the keys of a traditional instrument. Sarah watched the operation from the bedroom window, visibly upset. "It was Daddy's idea," Lily explained when she saw the piano being set up in the living room. Carmen helped position the instrument in a corner of the room, away from the more delicate furniture. As soon as the delivery men left, Lily rushed to the piano and sat on the adjustable bench. The first note she played resonated throughout the house with a clarity and depth that the tablet could never reproduce. Lily smiled, a genuine and wide smile that Carmen rarely saw. "Can I play?" Lily asked, looking at Carmen with anticipation. "Of course you can, Princess. It's yours." What followed was magical. Lily started with the same melody by Beethoven, but now with the rich sound of a real instrument. Her small hands quickly adapted to the physical keys, and within minutes she was improvising variations that left Carmen impressed. Mrs. Smith appeared in the living room, drawn by the sound. "My goodness," she murmured. "What talent!" Even Sarah came down the stairs, though she tried to maintain a neutral expression. Carmen noticed she was struggling against her own emotion, seeing her daughter so focused and happy. "Isn't it going to bother the neighbors?" Sarah asked. "It's 2 in the afternoon, Mom, and the walls are thick," Carmen replied diplomatically. Lily played for 2 straight hours, exploring different styles and melodies. When she finally stopped, her eyes sparkled with satisfaction. "Did you like it, Mom?" she asked, looking directly at Sarah for the first time in weeks. Sarah hesitated, then approached and gently touched her daughter's hair. "I did, sweetheart. You play very well." That night, while writing her daily report, Carmen noted, Lily showed exceptional interest in the new piano. She played for 2 hours straight, demonstrating advanced musical skills. "I strongly recommend formal music lessons." Below, she added, a personal note. "Music seems to be Lily's natural language. It is through it that she best expresses herself and connects with us." When Sarah read the report that night, for the first time in 2 weeks, she made no critical notes in the margins. Instead, she picked up the phone and began searching for piano teachers specializing in children with special needs. The 3rd month of Carmen at the Smiths' house brought an unexpected change. The arrival of Mrs. Johnson, Michael's mother and Lily's grandmother. At 72, Mrs. Johnson was an imposing figure, with grey hair always tied in, a strict bun and dark clothes, reflecting her austere personality. She had decided to make a prolonged visit to better understand the educational methods applied to her granddaughter. Carmen learned of the matriarch's arrival on a Monday morning when Sarah called her into the kitchen with a tense expression. "Carmen, I need to warn you that Lily's grandmother will be staying here for a few weeks," Sarah said, nervously fiddling with her phone. "Mrs. Johnson is, let's say, traditional. She has very strong opinions about parenting." "I understand," Carmen replied, though she sensed there would be complications. "And one more thing," Sarah continued, lowering her voice. "It's better not to mention certain particulars about Lily. Mrs. Johnson doesn't fully understand the situation yet. Carmen frowned. What do you mean? She knows that Lily has some difficulties, but she thinks it's a lack of discipline, not, you know. Sarah gestured vaguely. Better let her draw her own conclusions. That same day, around 3 in the afternoon, a silver SUV parked in the driveway. Mrs. Johnson stepped out of the car like a queen inspecting her domain, carrying a large leather bag and a crystal rosary in her hands. Michael rushed to help her with the bags, visibly nervous. "Where's my granddaughter?" were Mrs. Johnson's first words as she looked around the room with a critical air. Lily was at the piano, as had become her habit in the afternoons, playing her own version of Home on the Range. Upon hearing the unfamiliar voice, she abruptly stopped playing and turned on the bench. "Lily, come greet your grandmother," called Michael. The girl stood still where she was, just observing the woman in black who was staring at her expectantly. Carmen, who was folding clothes nearby, noticed the signs of growing anxiety in Lily, the subtle swaying of her body, her hands clenching and unclenching. "Is she not coming?" asked Mrs. Johnson in a tone that made her disapproval clear. "Grandma, Lily is a little shy," Michael explained diplomatically. "Shy or rude?" retorted the grandmother. "In my time, children greeted their elders properly." Carmen saw Lily begin to fidget more visibly. The girl got off the piano bench and walked over to her, partially hiding behind her legs. "Who is this woman?" asked Mrs. Johnson, noticing Carmen for the first time. "This is Carmen, Lily's nanny," Sarah introduced. "Carmen, this is Mrs. Johnson, Lily's grandmother." Carmen gave a small, respectful bow. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson." The woman examined her from head to toe with piercing eyes. "From the South?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. From Alabama." Mrs. Johnson seemed to be making mental notes. "And how long have you worked here?" 3 months, Mrs. Johnson." "Lily, stop hiding behind this woman and come greet your grandmother like a polite girl," ordered Mrs. Johnson in a firm voice. Lily shrank even further behind Carmen. The tension in the room was palpable. "Mrs. Johnson," Carmen intervened gently, "Lily needs a little time to get used to new people. It's normal for her." "Normal?" Mrs. Johnson's eyes narrowed. "What's normal about a 7-year-old acting like a baby?" "Mom, please," Michael murmured, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, Michael. It's high time someone spoke the truth in this house." Mrs. Johnson walked toward Lily and Carmen. "This girl is being spoiled too much. Piano, playtime, treats. In my day, children learn manners first, fun later." Lily began to make small sounds of discomfort, almost inaudible, but Carmen picked up on them immediately. "Excuse me, Mrs. Johnson," said Carmen, taking Lily by the hand. "I'm going to take Lily to get some water." "No!" exclaimed Mrs. Johnson. "She's not leaving here until she greets me properly." That was the last straw. Lily let out a loud whimper and began to rock her body violently. In seconds, she was on the floor, in a crisis episode similar to the one at the restaurant months before. "What kind of nonsense is this?" shouted Mrs. Johnson. "Get up right now, Lily." Carmen knelt beside Lily, completely ignoring the grandmother. She began to hum softly, creating a bubble of calm in the midst of the chaos. "Out, out, fish, out of the pond." "What nonsense is this?" protested Mrs. Johnson. "Stop that song and give that child a smack." "Mom, don't interfere," Michael exploded, surprising everyone. "Carmen knows what she's doing." The silence that followed was tense. Mrs. Johnson looked at her son with an expression of shock and indignation. Sarah was pale, clearly torn between supporting her husband and not displeasing her mother-in-law. Carmen continued humming, and slowly Lily began to calm down. When the crisis passed, the girl got up and walked directly to the piano, where she began to play a melancholic melody. "Michael," said Mrs. Johnson, in a controlled but icy voice, "I need to talk to you. Alone." Father and daughter withdrew to the office, and Carmen could hear raised voices even through the closed door. Sarah stayed in the living room, visibly uncomfortable. "Carmen, maybe you should take Lily to her room," suggested Sarah, but Lily was playing with an emotional intensity that Carmen had rarely seen. The music coming from the piano was sad, yet beautiful, as if the girl were processing all the tension through the keys. After 20 minutes, Michael and Mrs. Johnson emerged from the office. His face was red, and hers was stone-like. "Carmen," called Michael, "can you come here, please?" Carmen approached, leaving Lily at the piano. "My mother has some concerns about the methods you use with Lily," Michael said, avoiding looking directly at her. "What kind of concerns?" asked Carmen, although she already suspected the answer. It was Mrs. Johnson who replied, "This child is being treated as if she were mentally challenged. Songs, permissiveness, lack of discipline. It's time for her to learn how to behave in society." Carmen felt her blood boil, but kept her voice calm. "Mrs. Johnson, with all due respect, Lily is not mentally challenged. She is a very intelligent child who processes the world differently." "Differently?" Mrs. Johnson laughed bitterly. "That's the modern excuse for rude children." "It's not an excuse, it's reality," Carmen retorted, surprised by her own courage. "Lily is autistic, and she needs understanding, not spankings." The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Johnson looked at Michael with an expression of growing horror. "Autistic?" she repeated slowly. "You let this maid diagnose my granddaughter?" "Mom, we already knew," Michael murmured. "We just didn't want to worry you." "Knew?" Mrs. Johnson's voice rose an octave. "And you hid it from me, from her grandmother?" At that moment, the music from the piano stopped abruptly. Lily had stopped playing and was looking at the adults with an expression Carmen had never seen before, pure fear. "Now look what you've done," said Carmen, walking toward Lily. "You scared her." But to everyone's surprise, Lily did not run to Carmen. Instead, she got up from the bench and walked directly to Mrs. Johnson. "Grandma," she said, in a clear and firm voice that no one expected to hear, "I'm not bad. I'm just different." Mrs. Johnson was taken aback. It was the first time Lily had spoken directly to her, and the words carried an impressive, emotional maturity. "I like music," Lily continued, "and Carmen understands me. It doesn't hurt me, Grandma." Tears began to flow down Mrs. Johnson's face. Slowly, she knelt to Lily's level and extended her trembling arms. "I'm sorry, my granddaughter," she whispered. "Grandma didn't know." The days following Lily's revelation completely transformed the dynamics of the Smith household. Mrs. Johnson, who had arrived as a harsh critic, now spent hours watching her granddaughter with a mix of fascination and growing guilt. Carmen noticed how the grandmother discreetly positioned herself in the corners of the room when Lily played the piano, or how her eyes filled with tears every time the girl showed spontaneous affection. It was a humid Thursday in May when Carmen decided it was time to take the next step in Lily's journey. The girl had made tremendous progress, not only in music, but also in communication and social interactions. Carmen believed she was ready for something that could revolutionize her self-esteem, meeting other children like her. "Mr. Michael," Carmen said during breakfast while Lily played a soft melody on the living room piano. "Can I talk to you about an idea?" Michael, who had become noticeably more relaxed in recent weeks, nodded. "Of course, Carmen, go ahead." "There is a support group for families with autistic children that meets at St. Francis Church here in the neighborhood. They have gatherings every Wednesday afternoon. I think it would be good for Lily to meet other children who go through the same experiences as her." Sarah, who was checking social media on her phone, immediately looked up. "A support group, Carmen? I don't think it's necessary to expose Lily like that." It wouldn't be exposure, Mrs. Sarah, Carmen explained patiently. It would be socialization. Lily needs to understand that she is not alone, that there are other children like her. Mrs. Johnson, who had become an unexpected ally of Carmen, cleared her throat. Sarah, maybe Carmen is right. The girl needs to interact with other people. But what if someone recognizes Lily? What if they post pictures on social media? Sarah argued, her main concern always revolving around the family's public image. Michael closed the newspaper he had been reading. Sarah, we can't hide Lily from the world forever. If the group can help, I support it. That very afternoon, Carmen and Lily walked 6 blocks to St. Francis Church, a simple colonial building in the heart of Beverly Hills. Lily carried a small backpack with her favorite toys, a few colorful blocks, and a children's music book that Carmen had bought for her. The parish hall was decorated with children's drawings taped to the walls, and there was a colorful rug in the center where about 8 children played under the supervision of their mothers and some volunteers. Carmen immediately recognized the atmosphere of acceptance and understanding that permeated the environment. "Good afternoon," greeted a dark-haired woman in her 30s, approaching them with a warm smile. "Are you new here? I'm Aunt Daniela, the coordinator of the group." "Hi, Aunt Daniela, I'm Carmen, and this is Lily," Carmen replied, noticing how Lily positioned herself slightly behind her, observing everything with cautious curiosity. "It's great to have you here. Lily, how old are you?" 7, Lily replied softly, but looking directly at Aunt Daniela, which Carmen considered a huge progress. "Perfect. We have several children your age. Would you like to meet them?" During the first half hour, Lily stayed close to Carmen, watching the other children. There was Michael, 6 years old, who organized toy cars in perfect rows, Anna, 8, who drew complex geometric patterns, and Peter, 9, who knew all the bus schedules in Los Angeles by heart. The turning point came when Johnny, a 7-year-old boy with curly hair and a contagious smile, approached Lily carrying a small xylophone. "Do you like music?" he asked, noticing the music book in Lily's backpack. Lily nodded shyly. "I do too. Want to play together?" To Carmen's surprise and joy, Lily took the mallets that Johnny offered and began to play a simple melody. On the xylophone, Johnny smiled and started tapping on the floor, creating a rhythm that perfectly accompanied Lily's music. Within minutes, other children joined the improvised orchestra. Anna clapped along to the beat, Michael shook the toy cars as if they were maracas, and Peter hummed the bus schedules in a melody that, surprisingly, matched the music. "It's beautiful to see, isn't it?" commented Fernanda, Johnny's mother, approaching Carmen. "When they come together like this, it's as if they speak the same language." Carmen nodded, moved. Lily has never had friends her age. It's always been very difficult for her to connect. "Here they feel safe to be who they are," Fernanda explained. "They don't have to pretend to be normal." The session lasted 2 hours, and when it was time to leave, Lily didn't want to go. She had spent the whole time interacting with the other children, making music, sharing toys, and even talking about her favorite obsessions, colors, numbers, and musical patterns. "Can I come back next week?" Lily asked Carmen on the way home, a question she had never asked about any social activity. "Of course you can, Princess. Did you like your new friends?" "I did. They understand when I talk about music, and they don't think it's strange when I need to organize things." When they got home, Lily ran to tell her father, mother, and grandmother about the afternoon. She talked about Johnny and the xylophone, about Anna and her drawings, about how they all together had created a new piece of music. Sarah listened with a complex expression, pride mixed with concern. And there were no problems. No one asked intrusive questions. "No, Mom," Lily replied. "Everyone there is just like me. Aunt Daniela said we all have special brains." Mrs. Johnson approached and hugged her granddaughter. "That's wonderful, my granddaughter. I'm so glad you found your friends." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Carmen was called for a talk in the living room. She expected to find Sarah upset, but was surprised to see the family gathered with serene expressions. "Carmen," Michael began, "I wanted to thank you for your initiative. It's been a long time since I've seen Lily so happy and communicative." "It was lovely to see," added Mrs. Johnson. "The girl came here talking non-stop, sharing about every child she met." Sarah hesitated before speaking, but finally said, "Carmen, I may have been too protective, too worried about what others think, but seeing Lily today, so happy." Her voice faltered a bit. "I think she really needed this." Carmen smiled. "Lily is an amazing girl, Mrs. Sarah. She just needed a space where she could be herself." "And about the group," Michael continued, "we want this to become part of her routine, every Wednesday. And if there are other activities, other events—" "There's one thing," Carmen said, recalling a conversation she had with Aunt Daniela. "The group is organizing a musical presentation for Children's Day. The kids will play and sing for their families." Lily, who apparently wasn't sleeping as deeply as they thought, appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas. "Can I participate in the presentation?" she asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. Everyone laughed at the girl's cleverness. Michael stood up and climbed a few steps to be at her level. "Of course you can, sweetheart. If that's what you want, we'll support you." Lily ran down and hugged Carmen tightly. "Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for taking me there." In that moment, seeing Lily so happy and the family finally united around what was best for her, Carmen felt she was on the right path, not just as a caregiver, but as someone who was genuinely making a difference in that special child's life. Wednesday morning began with a phone call that would change everything. Carmen was preparing Lily's coffee when the house phone rang insistently. Mrs. Smith answered in the kitchen, and Carmen could hear her voice growing increasingly tense during the conversation. "Mrs. Sarah!" shouted Mrs. Smith, rushing to the living room. "It's urgent!" Sarah came down the stairs, still in her robe, her face pale. Carmen watched from the kitchen. Doctor, as her employer answered the phone, her expression shifting from confusion to absolute horror. "What do you mean, a report?" Sarah asked, her voice rising an octave. "Who did this?" Carmen felt her stomach churn. Lily, who was sitting at the kitchen table eating diced mango, stopped chewing and looked toward the living room, sensing the tension in the air. "No, it can't be," Sarah continued. "Carmen is... But how do they know about Lily's diagnosis? We never made it public." Carmen's blood ran cold. She discreetly moved closer to the door to listen better. "Child Protective Services?" Sarah repeated, now visibly trembling. "This afternoon, but..." The call ended, and Sarah stood frozen in the middle of the living room, holding the phone as if it were a venomous snake. Michael rushed in, still putting on his dress shirt. "What happened?" he asked. "Someone made a report to Child Protective Services," Sarah said in a hoarse voice, "claiming that we are putting Lily at risk by leaving her in the care of a person who is also autistic." Carmen felt her legs go weak. She hadn't yet told the family about her own suspicions and recent discoveries. Over the past few weeks, conversations with Aunt Daniela and other parents in the group had made her question certain aspects of her own personality and history. "But how do they know about Lily's autism?" Michael asked. "And how do they know about Carmen?" Mrs. Johnson came down the stairs at that moment, already dressed and with a determined expression. "What is all this noise?" Sarah explained the situation to her mother-in-law, who listened in growing silence. When Sarah finished, Mrs. Johnson turned directly to Carmen. "Carmen, I need you to be honest with me. Are you autistic?" The silence in the room was deafening. Carmen felt all eyes on her, waiting for an answer she was still discovering for herself. "Mrs. Johnson, I started to suspect recently," Carmen admitted, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. "Talking with other parents in the group, noticing certain traits in myself." "Oh my God," murmured Sarah. "And you didn't tell us?" "I'm still investigating," Carmen explained. "I scheduled an appointment with a specialist psychologist for next week. I didn't want to alarm you without being sure." Michael ran his hands through his hair, visibly stressed. "Carmen, this changes everything. If you really are autistic and someone found out—" "Found out how?" interrupted Mrs. Johnson. "Who could have that information?" Carmen thought quickly. She had talked with some mothers in the group about her own experiences, had researched online, and had even filled out some questionnaires. "It could have been someone from the support group," she said hesitantly. "Or maybe someone who saw us there." At that moment, Lily appeared at the kitchen door, clearly agitated by the tense atmosphere in the house. "Why is everyone mad?" she asked, swaying her body slightly. Carmen knelt down to Lily's level. "No one is mad, Princess. We're just talking about adult things." "Is it about me?" Lily asked with that keen perception that always surprised. "It's about all of us," Carmen replied honestly. 2 hours later, a white Corolla parked in front of the house. 2 women got out, a social worker from Child Protective Services and a child psychologist. Carmen watched from the window as they walked toward the front door, carrying folders and an air of authority that made her nervous. "Good afternoon," greeted the social worker, a black woman in her 40s with glasses and a professional smile. "I'm Marissa Smith from Child Protective Services. This is Dr. Helena Carter, psychologist. We received a report about possible neglect in the protection of a minor." Michael led them to the living room where the whole family was gathered. Lily had been sent to her room, but Carmen, she knew she was hiding at the top of the stairs, listening to everything. "Can you explain the nature of the complaint?" Michael asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We have been informed that the child Lily Smith, 7 years old, diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, is under the primary care of a staff member who is also on the spectrum," Marissa explained, consulting her notes. "The complaint alleges that this constitutes neglect, as an autistic person would not be able to adequately care for a child with special needs." Carmen felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "With all due respect," she said, finding strength in her voice, "who made this complaint, and on what grounds?" "The complaint was anonymous," replied Dr. Helena, a middle-aged blonde woman with an academic air, "but that does not diminish our obligation to investigate." "And what kind of investigation will be conducted?" asked Mrs. Johnson, taking a protective stance that Carmen did not expect. "We need to assess the child's care conditions, check for evidence of neglect or inadequacy, and determine if the caregivers are taking appropriate measures for the child's well-being," Marissa explained. "May I ask a question?" Carmen interjected. "Do you have any knowledge about autism? About the real capabilities of autistic individuals?" Dr. Helena seemed slightly offended. "I specialize in child development and neurological disorders. So you know that autistic individuals can be competent parents, successful professionals, teachers, doctors," Carmen continued. "Autism is not synonymous with incapacity." "That is true," the psychologist admitted, "but each case needs to be evaluated individually." Michael stood up. "Would you like to talk to Lily? See how she is?" For the next hour, the professionals observed Lily playing the piano, talked to her about her routines, and asked questions about how she felt with Carmen. The girl, initially shy, gradually opened up, especially when she began to play music. "Carmen teaches me beautiful songs," Lily said at one point, "and she understands when I need silence." "Do you like Carmen?" Dr. Helena asked. "Very much. She doesn't get mad when I feel confused. And she makes cheese bread that smells just like my grandma's, Lily replied, looking affectionately at Mrs. Johnson. After the conversation with Lily, the professionals gathered with the family in the living room. "Well," Marissa began, "we need to be honest. We found no evidence of neglect or inadequacy in the care. The child seems well cared for, happy, and is clearly making progress." Carmen felt an immense relief, but she knew that everything was not yet resolved. "However," Dr. Helena continued, "we strongly recommend that Mrs. Smith seek formal evaluation to confirm or rule out the autism diagnosis, and regardless of the outcome, we suggest periodic supervision to ensure everything remains appropriate." "I have already scheduled the evaluation," Carmen informed, "for next week." "Very well," Marissa said, closing her folder. "We will monitor the case for a few months, but for now, we see no need for immediate changes." When the professionals left, the family remained silent for a long moment. It was Lily who broke the tense atmosphere, coming down the stairs and running straight to Carmen. "Carmen, are you leaving?" she asked, her eyes filled with tears. Carmen hugged her tightly. "No, Princess, I'm not leaving." The week following the visit from Child Protective Services was marked by a silent tension that hung over the Smith household like a heavy cloud. Carmen felt the cautious glances from Sarah, who had returned to jotting everything down in her floral report notebook, and noticed how Michael avoided long conversations. Only Mrs. Johnson remained steadfast in her support, as if the external threat had awakened a fierce protective instinct in her. On Tuesday, Carmen had her appointment scheduled with Dr. Patricia Miller, a neuropsychologist specializing in adult autism, at her office in downtown Los Angeles. Carmen had requested the morning off and used the money she had been saving to buy a new refrigerator to pay for the private consultation. The office was located on the 10th floor of a commercial building on Afonso Pena Avenue. Carmen took the elevator up with her heart racing, carrying a folder with notes she had made about her own childhood and characteristics she now recognized as possible signs of neurodivergence. Dr. Patricia was a dark-haired woman in her 50s, with colorful glasses and a genuinely welcoming smile. Her office was decorated in soft colors, with toys and books organized in a way that created a comfortable environment. "Carmen, right?" she said, extending her hand. "Come in. Make yourself comfortable." For 2 hours, Carmen answered detailed questionnaires, shared about her childhood in rural Alabama, her social difficulties at school, her excessive sensitivity to noise and textures, her need for rigid routines, and her almost intuitive ability to understand children with special needs. "Tell me how you feel in crowds," Dr. Patricia asked. "I always avoided them. Since I was little, birthday parties were a nightmare. Too much noise, too many people talking at once. I would hide under the table until my mom took me." "A home?" Carmen explained. "And at school?" "I was the weird girl, always alone at recess, organizing pebbles or leaves by color and size. The other kids thought it was strange." Carmen smiled sadly. "But I didn't know it was strange. It made sense to me." The doctor was taking careful notes. "And when you started working with children, what motivated you?" "I think it was recognizing in some of them the same loneliness I felt, especially the children that others called difficult or problematic. I saw that they just needed to be understood in a different way." After the tests and conversations, Dr. Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Carmen, based on our conversation and the assessment tools we applied, I can confirm that you are indeed on the autism spectrum. Specifically, what we used to call Asperger's syndrome, now classified as level 1 ASD, autism requiring minimal support." Carmen felt a mix of relief and apprehension. "What does that mean in practice?" "It means that Your brain works in a neurodivergent way, which explains many of your characteristics. Your sensory sensitivity, your ability to focus intensely, your difficulty with conventional social interactions, but also your unique strengths. And what about my work? Caring for Lily? The doctor smiled. Carmen, in my experience, some of the best caregivers, teachers, and therapists I know are autistic individuals. You have a visceral understanding of what it means to be different, a natural patience for atypical behaviors, and an ability to create authentic connections with neurodivergent children. Carmen left the office with an official report in hand and a whirlwind of emotions in her chest. For the first time in her life, she had an explanation for always feeling like a fish out of water, for her need for routines, for her unique way of seeing the world. When she got home, she found a family meeting in progress in the living room. Michael, Sarah, and Mrs. Johnson were sitting around the coffee table, their expressions serious. "Carmen," called Michael, "how was the appointment?" Carmen took a deep breath and sat down with them. "Confirmed. I'm autistic." Sarah was the first to speak. "And now, Child Protective Services said they would follow up." "Sarah," Mrs. Johnson reprimanded, "let the girl speak." Carmen took the report out of her bag. "The doctor did a thorough assessment. She said that my condition not only does not hinder my ability to care for Lily, but it might even be an advantage." "How so?" asked Michael. "Autistic people who work with autistic children have an intuitive understanding of their needs. It's like we speak the same language." At that moment, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, obviously having overheard the conversation. "Carmen, are you like me?" she asked, slowly descending the steps. Carmen smiled. "In a certain way, yes, Princess. Our brains work in a similar way." Lily ran to Carmen and hugged her tightly. "That's great. Now I have someone who really understands me." The scene touched everyone present. Mrs. Johnson discreetly wiped away a tear, and even Sarah seemed moved. "Carmen," said Michael, "we want you to know that this doesn't change anything for us. You continue to be the best thing that has happened for Lily." "And for our whole family," Mrs. Johnson added firmly. Sarah hesitated before speaking, but finally said, "Carmen, I need to apologize. I spent so much time worrying about what others would think that I almost lost sight of what was best for my daughter. You saved our family." That afternoon, Carmen called Aunt Daniela from the support group to share the diagnosis. The coordinator showed no surprise. "I suspected it," Aunt Daniela admitted. "Your way of interacting with the children, your sensitivity to pick up on their signals, it's very common among autistic adults working in the field. Aunt Daniela, can I ask you something? Do you think someone from the group could have made that report?" "Honestly, I think it was someone from outside who saw us at the park last week. Some mothers commented that they saw people taking pictures, people who seemed to be observing the group." Carmen sighed. "Prejudice is still very strong, isn't it?" "Yes, but it's changing. Little by little, people are understanding that autism is not a disability. And cases like yours, Carmen, help break those stereotypes." That night, Carmen wrote in her journal something different from the usual. Lily had an excellent day. Discussion about neurodiversity led to greater closeness and mutual understanding. Recommendation: family considers including more information about autism in family discussions to reduce stigma and strengthen bonds. When Sarah read the report, instead of making critical notes, she wrote at the bottom of the page, "Thank you, Carmen, for teaching us to see our daughter and you with new eyes." It was the first time in months that Carmen truly slept peacefully, knowing that her identity had not only been accepted but celebrated by the family she had learned to love. 3 weeks after the official diagnosis, Carmen woke up on a Friday morning with a strange feeling in her stomach. It wasn't anxiety. She had already learned to recognize and manage those episodes. It was something different, a mix of nervousness and anticipation that she couldn't identify. The answer came when Lily ran to her in the kitchen, holding a colorful envelope. "Carmen, Carmen, the invitation has arrived," the girl shouted, hopping from one foot to the other. Carmen opened the envelope and read aloud, "Invitation to the first inclusive musical showcase of the St. Francis Group. Date, next Saturday, 3 p.m. Location, auditorium of St. Augustine School." Sarah appeared in the kitchen, still in her robe, drawn by Lily's excitement. "What invitation is this?" "The children's performance from the support group," Carmen explained. "Remember I mentioned it. Lily will play the piano." "Oh, yes," said Sarah, but Carmen noticed a hesitation in her voice. "And how many people will be watching?" "I don't know, Mrs. Sarah. Probably the families of the children, some guests." "And will there be press? Photographers?" Carmen frowned. Even after all the progress, Sarah still worried first about public exposure. "I have no idea, but does that matter?" Before Sarah could respond, Michael entered the kitchen, already dressed for work. "What's all this commotion?" Lily showed the invitation to her dad, who read it with a genuine smile. "That's great, sweetheart. Daddy will be there in the front row to watch you." "And you, Mom?" Lily asked, looking at Sarah with anticipation. "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah replied, but Carmen noticed that she avoided looking directly at her daughter. During breakfast, Mrs. Johnson came down the stairs carrying 2 fabric bags. "Good morning, everyone," she greeted, placing the bags on the table. "Carmen, I brought something for you." Curious, Carmen opened one of the bags and found a simple yet elegant navy blue cotton dress with hand-embroidered details. "Mrs. Johnson, you didn't have to—" "Of course I did," the grandmother interrupted. "You'll be on stage with Lily, right? You need to look beautiful." Carmen was confused. "On stage? I'll be in the audience watching." "No, you won't," said Lily. Lily insisted. "You will play with me. I already arranged it with Aunt Daniela." "Lily, dear, I can't go on stage with you," Carmen explained patiently. "That's for you kids." "But I can't do it without you," protested Lily, and Carmen saw tears forming in her eyes. "What if I forget the music? What if I get nervous?" Michael knelt down to his daughter's level. "Lily, you've played that song hundreds of times. You can do it." "I can't do it alone," Lily insisted. "I need Carmen by my side." Carmen knelt down too. "Princess, listen here. You are much stronger and braver than you think. Remember when you played for Grandma Johnson for the first time? You were nervous then too, but you did beautifully. It was different. It was at home. There will be so many strangers there." At that moment, Aunt Daniela called. Carmen answered, and after a brief conversation, hung up with a surprised expression. "What happened?" Michael asked. "Daniela said Lily asked me to accompany her on the piano. Apparently they rehearsed a 4-hand version of Watercolor by Toquinho." "4-hand?" repeated Sarah. "That's when 2 people play the piano together." Lily explained, excited again. "Carmen plays the bass part and I play the treble. It sounds beautiful." Carmen was genuinely surprised. "Lily, when did you arrange this?" "Last Wednesday, when you went to the bathroom. I told Aunt Daniela I wanted you to play with me, and she said it would be lovely." Michael smiled. "Carmen, I think you have no choice." "But I can't. I mean, is it appropriate?" Carmen hesitated. "Why wouldn't it be?" asked Mrs. Johnson. "You are part of this success story just as much as Lily." Sarah remained silent throughout the discussion, nervously fiddling with her phone. On Saturday morning, the house was in a frenzy. Lily had woken up at 6, too anxious to sleep. Carmen arrived early and found the girl already dressed in a white dress with blue details that Mrs. Johnson had specially bought for the occasion. "Carmen, did you bring the dress?" Lily asked as soon as she saw her. "I did. I'll change in a bit." Throughout the morning, Lily practiced the song on the living room piano at least 10 times, with Carmen by her side. The harmony between them was perfect. Carmen played the bass notes that supported the melody, while Lily shone in the treble, adding embellishments and variations that made the music even more beautiful. Around noon, Sarah appeared in the room wearing a discreet business suit. "Mom, you look beautiful," Lily said. "Thank you, sweetheart," Sarah replied, but Carmen noticed tension in her posture. "Mrs. Sarah, is everything okay?" Carmen asked. Sarah hesitated before responding. "Carmen, can I talk to you? Alone?" They headed to the backyard garden. Sarah walked to the edge of the pool and turned her back to Carmen for a moment. "Carmen, I need to be honest with you about something," she finally said, turning around. "What is it?" "I'm terrified." Carmen was surprised. "Terrified of what?" "Of going on that stage and everyone seeing that my daughter is different, seeing that she needs you to be able to perform." Sarah wiped away a tear that had fallen. "I know this is terrible to admit. I know I should just be proud of her." Carmen stepped closer. "Mrs. Sarah—" "No, let me finish," Sarah continued. "For months, I've lived pretending that if we followed strict protocols, if we controlled everything just right, maybe Lily's autism would disappear, as if it were just a phase. And now I know I was wrong. Autism is part of who she is, and you helped me see that this is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to celebrate." Sarah took a deep breath. "So today, when I'm in that audience, I will be celebrating my amazing daughter and you, who taught us to love her just the way she is." Carmen felt her eyes welling up. "Mrs. Sarah—" "Just call me Sarah," she said with a smile. "I think it's time." At 2 in the afternoon, the whole family headed to the auditorium of St. Augustine's School. Carmen was nervous, but seeing Lily so confident and excited made her anxiety transform into positive anticipation. The auditorium was packed, about 200 people, including family, friends, and some professionals in the field. Carmen spotted some familiar faces from the support group and waved to them. "Carmen," called Aunt Daniela, approaching the stage. "Are you ready?" Lily nodded vigorously. Carmen took a deep breath. "We are," she replied. The auditorium of St. Augustine's School was filled with a silent anticipation as Carmen and Lily stepped onto the stage. The warm lights from the ceiling illuminated the black grand piano positioned at the center, and Carmen could see curious, smiling faces in the audience. In the front row, Michael, Sarah, and Mrs. Johnson waved discreetly, conveying all the support possible. Lily walked confidently to the piano, but Carmen noticed a slight tremor in her small hands. When she sat on the bench, the girl looked at Carmen with a mix of nervousness and determination that deeply touched the caregiver's heart. "Take a deep breath, Princess," Carmen whispered, sitting beside her on the double bench that Aunt Daniela had provided. "Remember our music at home?" Lily nodded and placed her hands on the keys. Carmen did the same, positioning her fingers on the bass notes that would support the melody of Watercolor. "Good afternoon," said Aunt Daniela into the microphone. "Our next performance is very special. Lily is 7 years old and has discovered music as a unique way to express herself. She is accompanied by Carmen, who, besides being her caregiver, is someone who deeply understands Lily's musical language. Together they will play Watercolor by Toquinho." Carmen looked at Lily and whispered, "When you're ready." The first note that Lily played resonated crystal clear throughout the auditorium. Carmen quickly joined in. The music flowed between them like an intimate conversation, each knowing exactly when it was their turn to shine. Lily closed her eyes and lost herself in the music, as she always did. Her fingers danced across the keys with impressive naturalness, adding small variations to the original melody that made it even more beautiful. Carmen accompanied her perfectly, intuitively adapting to every change that Lily proposed. When they reached the most emotional part of the piece, Lily opened her eyes and looked directly at the audience. For the first time, Carmen saw the girl, not just playing, but genuinely connecting with the people watching her. There was no more anxiety on her face, just the pure joy of sharing something she loved. In the middle of the performance, something magical happened. Some children from the support group in the audience began to hum the melody softly. First, it was Johnny, then Anna, and soon several childlike voices joined in an impromptu harmony that brought many adults to tears. Carmen spotted Sarah in the front row, openly crying, but with a radiant smile on her face. Michael held his wife's hand and discreetly waved to Lily, conveying all the pride he felt. Mrs. Johnson was visibly moved, whispering prayers of gratitude. When the music came to an end, Lily played the last note with a softness that left the auditorium in complete silence for a few seconds. Then, as if they had coordinated it, everyone stood up in an ovation that lasted almost 3 minutes. Lily stood and took a small bow, then turned to Carmen and hugged her tightly in the middle of the stage. "We did it, Carmen," she said, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "You did it, princess." Carmen replied, returning the hug. "You were perfect." When they stepped off the stage, they were greeted by dozens of people wanting to congratulate them. Parents of other children from the group approached to praise the performance. Some teachers from the school made comments about Lily's exceptional talent, and several children came to hug both of them. "Carmen," called a familiar voice. It was Dr. Helena, the psychologist who had participated in the Child Protective Services visit weeks earlier. Carmen was surprised to see her. "Dr. Helena, what are you doing here?" "I came specifically to see you two," she explained with a genuine smile. "After our conversation, I became curious to better understand this dynamic between you and Lily. I must say I was impressed." "Thank you," Carmen said, still not fully understanding. "Carmen, I would like to make a proposal. I am organizing a conference on autism and inclusion at UCLA next month. I would like you to participate as a speaker." Carmen was taken aback. "Me? But doctor, I don't have an academic background. You have something much more valuable, real experience and a unique perspective. Believe me, the scientific community needs to hear stories like yours." Michael, who had approached during the conversation, placed a hand on Carmen's shoulder. "Carmen, that would be amazing. Would you consider it?" Carmen looked at Lily, who was watching her with anticipation. I will think about it." "Carmen always thinks a lot," Lily commented, making everyone laugh. "But she always makes the right decision." Later, when the family was gathered at home celebrating with a special dinner prepared by Mrs. Smith, Michael made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Everyone, Sarah and I have talked a lot in the past few weeks, and we've come to an important decision." Everyone stopped eating and looked at him. "We decided to create an institute focused on children with autism. A place that offers not only therapies and support, but also activities like music, art, sports. Everything designed to enhance the unique talents of these children." Carmen nearly choked on her juice. "Seriously?" "Seriously," Sarah confirmed, "and we want you to be our educational coordinator." "But I don't have the qualifications for that," Carmen protested. "You will," Michael said. "We will pay for you to pursue a degree in education with a specialization in special education. And while you study, you will coordinate the institute based on your practical experience." Lily jumped out of her chair and ran to hug Carmen. "You're going to be the director, just like the director of my school." Carmen was so emotional that she couldn't respond immediately. Mrs. Johnson stood up from the table and hugged her too. "My dear, you deserve this and so much more," said her grandmother. "You have transformed our family." "No," Carmen replied, finally finding her voice. "We have transformed together." That night, while writing the last report in the floral report notebook, since Sarah had decided that daily reports were no longer necessary, Carmen wrote, "Today, Lily not only played the piano, she soared, and she taught me that sometimes, to help someone find their wings, we first need to discover our own. Thank you, Santana family, for allowing me to be part of this incredible journey." Below, Sarah wrote, "Thank you, Carmen, for teaching us that different is not less. It is just unique." Michael added, "Welcome to the family, officially." And Lily, with her still childish handwriting, drew a heart and wrote, "Carmen, music in my heart." Finally, Mrs. Johnson wrote a prayer. "May God continue to bless this union of souls that found each other at the right moment." That night, Carmen went to sleep knowing she had found not just a job, but a purpose, and that Lily had found not just a caregiver, but someone who saw her exactly as she was, perfect in her uniqueness. 14 months after that first meeting at the restaurant, Carmen had graduated with a degree in special education, was directing the Lily Santana Institute, a name suggested by the honoree herself, giving talks about autism across the country, and was a heart mother to the girl who had changed her life forever. At 9 years old, Lily was teaching piano to other children with autism, spoke fluently about her emotions, and dreamed of being a pianist and teacher when she grew up. Just like Carmen. The book Carmen had written about her journey, Musical Hearts, a story of encounters and discoveries, became a national reference in inclusive education. Every Wednesday, without fail, Carmen and Lily returned to the support group at St. Francis Church, no longer as individuals seeking help, but as living examples that love, understanding, and acceptance can transform entire destinies. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and if you watched until now, comment, "I watched until now," and share your thoughts on this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's going to be very emotional.